And today I am going to be talking to you about, oh, come on, share screen. There you go. We're going to be discussing terrifying tales of testing in production. Good evening. Prepare yourself to be given a terrible fright by the contents of these tales. We begin tonight with The Cat's Eye, in which cats kind of save the day. So I am at a company and I'm doing testing and I'm having a great time. I am not having a great time because it's all manual. One of the main things that I'm testing right now, we call it the spam cannon. And we call it the spam cannon because it shoots off giant spam emails to a bunch of people. Now, I wasn't able to test this in development because I couldn't send emails in dev. And it was so annoying. It was so annoying because I had to write this huge long SQL statement to get the right users by ID, to put them in, to have the email sent. So one of my developer friends very, very kindly built a feature into the spam cannon where I could just give it a string of IDs and it would either send to those IDs or not send to everybody but those IDs. So I could say, here are my test users. Let's do the thing. I'm sure someone has already guessed where this story is going. I put in all of my test users. I give the email a title of, if you see this, let Jenny know. I fill the entire body of it with pictures of cats and the Wikipedia article about cats. 20 minutes later, I haven't received any emails. I'm like, it's odd. I wonder what's going on there. So I checked the logs, and despite the spam cannon telling me very, very confidently it was only going to send to 5 users, it was actually sending to about 3 million users. And I had to kill the job because there was no other way to stop the spam cannon other than like manually going in and killing the job. And I was like, oh, how many people did it send to? Don't worry, only 10,000 users. We had a support staff of about 4 people at the time, and they were absolutely inundated with calls asking people to let Jenny know that they had seen her email and they hoped she was doing okay because it was kind of a wild email.
Oh, that's fun.
It was so fun. Here's a couple more examples from the internet. The one on the left is one of my favorites. There's an application called Power Schools, which is where a lot of people get information about their children's schooling. Someone at Power Schools sent out, I think it was 24 dev and test notifications. And this is a Google search for Power Schools notifications. You can see people were posting about it everywhere. Airbnb, here's a post from Reddit where they say, hey, who's on the dev server sending out things? And now everybody's checking and being like, oh, I got it. And if you'll notice, I did censor this a little bit. We'll get to that in a minute. This is why you don't make a test message something like big fill in the blank. This is why you do, because if you make it big fill in the blank, you're going to get fill in the blank canned. Do it be a legend. Don't do that. Here's an FAQ with a bunch of test information. Here is a software engineer test job visible only to LinkedIn and employees that 17 people have applied to. That one's still live. Couple more favorites. Here's one from Crunchyroll. The flooded test basement in my mom's house was a test venue that I had on Reverb Nation when I worked there. And people would apply to play there all the time. The final one is Cult Leader. Honestly, that one's for a crypto company, so it might be real. It's unclear. One that I couldn't find screenshots of, but I wanted to bring up is I was on a forum and someone was saying, is anybody know anyone at Airbnb? Someone in dev is using my rental to book test visits. So he was not able to actually have people book his rental because it was full of these test visits that would get canceled within a couple of days of when the booking was supposed to happen. So why we brought all this up? One of the first rules of testing on production is use safe data. Don't write swears. I know it's funny. Don't do it. Don't be funny either. Your users are going to see this. They are absolutely going to see your test data at some point. Either it's going to be users, it's going to be clients, it's going to be a client engagement team. Someone is going to see it. So make it data that's not offensive. Make it clearly identified as test data. Testy McTesterson, great. Something slightly offensive, not great. Song lyrics, possibly okay, depending on what your context is. Right now, I'm in financials. I would not use song lyrics. When I was working at Reverb Nation, I would use song lyrics and offensive ones. And if you're like, well, I don't think this is offensive, but don't use it. And don't impact real users. So if you are doing tests in production, do it in a way that doesn't impact real people. If they see it, it should be funny. It should be like a secret peek behind the curtain, but not something that's going to change how they interact with the system. Like the poor guy in his Airbnb booking. Our next terrifying tale is the terrifying tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Production style. So I am, again, testing on production because that's apparently just what I do. I was working in a company that was very location-based. And because of how we'd sanitize the data on our development servers in lower environments, we weren't able to really test location-based services until we got to production. So we would have a bunch of test accounts. What we were doing at the time is we had basically a test account flag on the accounts, and we checked that. And if it was true, a bunch of behavior would suddenly open up. And you would see a bunch of stuff. So tested, everything seemed fine. Fixed up the code, sent it back out to production. Everything broke. People were suddenly not seeing things and seeing things. And the logic was just all wrong because it turns out we weren't testing production. We were testing production's evil twin. The rest of the talk is like this, so buckle up. Don't use test flags. That is our second rule of testing in production. You are not testing production if production knows it's a test. Don't do test account equals true. Your test account and your test setup has to look like production. If the way you're setting up your data needs a control statement, you're probably doing it wrong. You want to make sure that when you're testing in production, you're not testing test behavior. You're testing real, actual user behavior. You want to make sure that what you're doing is real and authentic. Feature flags are kind of okay here. The next conference I go to, I'm going to have a sticker that says feature flags won't solve all your problems. They'll solve some of your problems, but not all of them, because you do have to clean them up. Otherwise, you're going to get in the same place where you've got this weird feature flagged behavior that is testing a feature flag. You're not testing the behavior. So make sure that when you're doing this kind of testing, you're testing the behavior in production. You're not just testing if the flag works. Our next terrifying tale is the picture of Dorian Gray, in which our actions have a surprising effect on the secret world of operations. So again, I'm testing, and I'm testing in that same location-based services company. And because I'm a manager, I am hiring testers. Because I'm a manager that hires testers in her network, I'm hiring a lot of people in North Carolina. Just happens to be where a lot of my network is based. So I hired a whole bunch of people from North Carolina. And suddenly we were all testing on production because we need the location services. And we actually triggered a process on kind of the back end where we started recruiting more people to fulfill these visits, because suddenly this small part of North Carolina had a whole bunch of visits that were not getting filled. I hired enough North Carolina testers that I had a real, actual effect on production. Now, this is good because, as I told you in the last story, your test data should look like production data. And if it does, it's going to look production-like enough to change production. Here's my other favorite story about this. The Hawaiian Missile Crisis of 2018. I'm sure some of you were around for this. The entire state of Hawaii got this first emergency alert that says ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. And then 38 minutes later, no, sorry, there's no missiles. No missiles are coming. Everything's fine, including signs on the highways that said there is no threat, and an email. Everybody got an email about it, which is, I thought, very nice. This one is interesting because this was a real actual alert that was sent out because the person doing the alerts didn't realize this was a test. Whenever they actually do these test runs, the person calling in the test says, exercise, 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 then gives the information like you would in a real missile crisis, and then ends the message with exercise, exercise, exercise. So they're prepending and appending it with exercise, exercise, exercise to say this is not real. The guy who had his finger on the button didn't hear it or was a malicious actor. It is unclear which, but he went through a couple of different screens to post this message because he didn't realize this was a test, not a real thing. That was a scary 38 minutes for a lot of people because no one was informed it was a test. And that's the point here. Keep people informed. While you're testing on production, make sure folks know what you're doing. This is a really great time to step back and look at the shadow organization of your company. Like, there is your organizational chart, and then there's a shadow organization that's the actual influencers in the company. Make sure operations is aware, support is aware, your boss is aware, your boss's boss is aware. Everybody should know that this is going on. So if they start seeing a weird spike in behavior, they can react to it. And again, if your testing looks like production activity, it's going to influence production decisions and might make more work for people. So understand the consequences of your actions. More than once, we actually had people who were supposed to be servicing visits show up to the office because we would use the office as a test location a lot of times. And people would show up and they'd be like, what do you mean there's no visit to have here? Like, I joined this gig thing to help people and you're telling me I can't help people? So our CEO would take them to lunch. Like, okay, cool. That sounds better than going on a visit. So understand the consequences of your action. Understand who you need to keep informed. And I like to refer to this sometimes as the rule of no surprises. You don't want this to be a surprise. You want everyone to be on board with your testing and production. You want to be able to say, we're doing this for a good reason. We're making sure that things are safe. Here are the guardrails we've got in place. Here's what might happen. Here's what might not happen. So don't surprise people. Our next terrifying tale is the House of Wax, in which the scaffolding is people. There has been more than one company I've worked for where you could not test on development. Like, you could test on dev, you could test in lower environments, but it was really just a token thing. And the integrations weren't there. The data wasn't there. For whatever reason, whenever you tested on staging, it didn't tell you anything about the success of the feature when it went to production. So we had to test on production, generally to catastrophic results, because the scaffolding wasn't in place to be able to do this safely. And that's what people think about a lot of times when they talk about testing in production is, this is so dangerous, this is so risky, this is so terrible. But if you have the right scaffolding in place, it's not going to be. So what do I mean by the right scaffolding? You want to be able to roll back quickly. If you are putting something out on production where your test user can see it, potentially real users can see it as well, because again, of how we've set up our test data. So we want to be able to roll back quickly, and quickly means different things in different companies. And that really depends on how risk averse your organization is. Surprisingly, when I worked in healthcare, they could take on a lot of risk because we could roll back so quickly. I think we had a 10 to 30 minute rollback, depending on what part of the system we were talking about. So make sure that if you're changing data when you're doing your testing, that's accounted for as well. Describe your risks and mitigations. really dive in and say, what are we risking by testing on production? Are we potentially going to terrify the entire state of Hawaii? Or is somebody going to see a button that looks funny and or doesn't work? Is somebody going to see, tell Jenny if you see this email when it goes out? You won't need to do this all the time, but especially as you're starting to ramp up your testing and production practice, you're going to want to be very explicit about, yes, I've looked through this. Yes, I understand it. Yes, we're doing this for a reason. Something that's going to help there is understand the difference between your lower environments and production environments. What can't you test on lower environments? What can you not test with confidence on lower environments? Is there not a Google API integration? Can you not send email? Are there third-party APIs that you can't hit? Is the data really just terrible on lowers? Make a list, write it down, and then work to make your lowers better. Can you get to a point where you could potentially send email? Can you get to a point where you've got good data on there? This was really important for me at a lot of companies, especially the data piece, because it felt like developers didn't really think about it because they always just made new data on their dev environment. So when they got it to stage, I was like, well, this is acting really weird because my data is all messed up. So we got to a point where we were refreshing pretty constantly. And that was really great because it's not just about the data you need for this test. It's about the entire shape of the data on production. Because users will do some weird stuff that you have to account for or at least be aware of. I think it's really important here to have this scaffolding. You don't want to test on production because you're desperate. And you don't want to not test on production because you're terrified. Work to test the risky things. Work to get away from fear-based testing. And if your lower environments are no good, that needs to be an absolute crisis for everyone in your company. Is it going to be? No. Should it be? Yes. One of my previous companies, we actually treated stage issues on stage like production incidents. If test wasn't able to do our jobs on the lower environments, we would call an incident and we would actually have that treated with the same seriousness as a production incident. Because not being able to push code to production, not being able to test it safely is an incident. Like that is a huge problem, especially when you want to move fast, break things, move slow, whatever phrase we're using these days. Our next tale is Young Frankenstein. Okay, so this isn't really a story about when testing went kind of sideways on production. It's more a story when people were like, don't. Production testing on production can be safe, secure, and the best option for some types of testing. There are always going to be things we cannot test on lowers. And a lot of times I would, particularly product owners I've had trouble with, I will go to them and I will say, hey, I'm going to test this on production. I'm not going to actually test this in lowers. And they'll have a little bit of a conniption. They'll have a, what my grandma used to call a come apart, have a little come apart. And that's cool and all. I'm like, okay, so what do you want me to do? They're like, well, I want you to test it safely. I'm like, okay, I just told you how I was going to do that. Going back to the scaffolding piece, being able to describe my risks, being able to describe why I'm doing what I'm doing, and really showing the depth of my subject matter expertise is how I got to a point where, excuse me, where these folks could trust me enough to let me do the testing that I knew was the right thing. It even got to the point at one of my favorite jobs where one of the product owners who was like adamantly against me doing this came to me and said, hey, let's partner together. Let's actually, we called it Project TIP, test and production, because we're cute like that. Let's put together an entire project, describe how this is going to be done, and really just create this methodology for testing and production. What we end up doing is having a You're gonna be like, Jenny, but you just said we had a flag on our test accounts that indicated if they were a test account or not. And the major rule I had here was that flag was not used to influence behavior, was not used to show things or hide things. It was only used in a reporting fashion. We had a bunch of operation stuff, and if the test account activity showed up in their operations reports, it would influence how many people they would hire. So we wanted to be able to cut that out of our reports. And I had a couple other things where I described how we wanted to do testing in production, how you should name your accounts, the ways that you should, we used it, it was a very language-based app, so we had a special language for the test accounts to use. So, and it was called ZZ Test was the language we had. It was technically selectable by end users, but you had to find it, and it was hidden, so that worked really well. And I heard from someone that still works there that they still reference that document. They still use that method today. So that's a huge win for me. Describe the goals for your testing. We should always know what we are trying to gain from the testing we're doing. This is testing in production. This is your automated testing, your UI test, your unit test. Everything should have a goal. We don't just test because we feel like it. We don't just test to do busy work. Sometimes we do. We shouldn't. We should always have a goal. We should always have something we're trying to learn. And if you can describe what you're trying to learn, people are going to be so excited about you doing your testing. This is also a really great way to influence the cultures of quality at your company, is say, because I run these UI tests, here's what I've learned about our system. I've learned that everything meets expectations and we're safe to proceed to production. I've learned that there is a section of our code where we're not meeting the expectations the UI tests have set. We may need to update them. Beautiful. Love it. Don't leave production in a mess. Like, do your dishes, y'all. If you are testing in production and something goes a little sideways, you're going to want to clean up from that. If you've got a whole bunch of things that you've created as test data, go ahead and clean that up. It's fine if users see it, but you don't want it to be messy. I actually had a really hard time finding the flooded test basement in my mom's house because we had hidden it from a lot of searches, because it's test data and it's old test data. I mean, I worked there. Oh no, now I feel old. I worked there like 15, almost 20 years ago. So, oh my gosh. So yes, that test data should have been cleaned up when I left the company, but they laid me off. So like, And finally, help people understand why certain types of testing are done in certain places. We don't just do testing to do testing. We do it for a reason. We do it here for a reason. We do it there for a reason. We can talk about the testing pyramid. We can talk about the testing skyscraper. If you haven't read Andy's article, go do that. Because we do certain amounts of testing in certain places for reasons. Be able to articulate this to people, because testing can be a little mysterious and we don't really want. All right, we've got one more testing tale, but this is less of a tale and more of a poem, if you will permit me. But the raven still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling. Straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and busting door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy into fancy, thinking, what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, ominous bird of yore meant in croaking. Your testing might not go well. Someone may come to you and say, you've ruined everything. You have pushed a dev notification to prod. This is the worst. Nevermore. Don't stop, can't stop, won't stop. Evaluate your testing. Step back and say, what knowledge could I have had that would have changed the testing I did, how I did it, how I approached it? Testing in production is such an important tool in our toolbox. We absolutely need it to be able to be well-rounded, fully fleshed out testers. We can do it safely. We can do it well, but we have to be able to do it. So if something goes wrong, if you are Power Schools and you push out 22 notifications, if your LinkedIn job post that should be employees only is getting hundreds of applications, step back and say, what did I miss? What did we miss as a team? What could we have known that would have changed this? And is this something we could have done on a lower environment with less risk? You're not going to have to do this every single time. Sometimes it's just, oh, that was a bug. Isn't that funny? But doing it a couple of times and really running a retro, running an RCA on your testing is going to increase the amount of subject matter expertise people assume you have. Being able to defend your testing, being able to say, this is why I did this, and this is what we gained from it, will be amazing for your career as you keep testing in production. So keep testing in production. All right, time for the big recap. Use safe data. Assume your users are going to see it. Don't use test flags. You're not testing in production if production knows it's a test. Keep people informed. Your testing should look real enough to have an impact. Understand that impact. Have the right scaffolding. You can't test without a safety net. Understand what you're testing and why. Describe it, defend it. You're going to do great. And then evaluate your testing. Keep testing in production. Keep improving. Keep making our systems and our world and the way we do software engineering better. And that is the terrifying tales of testing in production. Does anyone have any questions or any experience to share where you've maybe done this and it's gone well or less well?
Hi, Jenny. I'll share the experiences, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, in one of the companies where I worked, we had some of the times for testing purpose, some database side, they might switch into production and the UI teams would be informed, but there might be some delays in getting those messages or something. So when we were doing some bookings, the team was not aware that the test environment is pointing to the live database, and there were multiple hotel bookings being made, and some of the hotels didn't have the refund policy. And then it made some impact, like because no one was aware that the hotel bookings would not be cancelled. Some which we were able to cancel, those were done, but the correct team was not informed. So there was a bit of confusion there. So your presentation is really helpful. So when you were explaining it, I was just recalling scenarios. Okay, yeah, this makes sense. That makes sense. It's very good presentation. And one more scenario which I can share, that when we are doing testing, we enter phone numbers, mobile numbers, and sometimes there are email notification or text messages coming through. So one of the services which sends out email notification was pointing to live, and that service send out multiple phone numbers. Good thing is people had their own mobile numbers. So entering when they were testing, people, we were told that always use your own personal mobile numbers instead of entering random numbers, or because it really helps out. And always use proper test data for addresses. So when you're giving a demo to customers or clients, it should not be looking awkward. Okay, you are entering ABCD as an address, or number 123 as a postcode. So even though you are doing testing in lower environments, always use real data for your testing, whichever country it is, because when you're working for something like labels or addresses, there you need a proper address details. So yeah, these are some of the experiences which I would like to share.
Bringing up the phone number thing is really important. You said you're in the UK, right?
Yeah, I'm in UK, but the
You're,
applications we had to test had international addresses and phone numbers. And one of the scenarios was reviews. When you write a hotel review, when you're testing, you write just something random messages on the reviews. So we were mentioned not to write any random text message on the reviews because it becomes too much for reviews team, hotel or any holiday reviews team to tidy up all those random data. When you are on live testing a review service, use a proper nice data to enter in production also for the even you test one or two, but write proper nice reviews on the hotels or holidays, any feature whichever you're testing, but I'm just giving some examples of what thank you.
over here in the US, there are incredibly large penalties for not respecting opt-out for text messages. So if you are testing anything with SMS, those can be company-ending fines if you get it wrong. So that's one of those things where having any kind of phone number data on your lowers is so incredibly risky, because if the SMS somehow gets turned on, like if somebody's being helpful and don't understand what's going on, it could literally end your company. And I know the UK also has incredibly strict rules around data privacy and all of that. So if anyone's like, I think I'll turn on SMS in lowers, just start screaming. Like, just start screaming. Oh, Judy, hi.
Hey, it's good to see you.
You too.
Yeah, this was really great. I am one of those that is very afraid of testing in production. I've been in different organizations where, some they're just like, oh yeah, go ahead. But they have no there's no, it will affect things and things will be bad and people will be coming for me if I touch the keyboard. So, but I will say where I am now, we actually have our own, it's like we have our own little section of the internet where we can test things and it's okay. And we can see results, but it won't affect clients. And it's a very good, yeah, I feel that I'm in a very, very lucky spot right now, but yeah, I still operate out of fear though, which I appreciated how you said, don't be afraid to test in production. And when you do, this is the way you should do it. And I really liked the points that you made.
Thank you. Jenna Charlton has a really great talk on risk or fear, what's driving your testing. And for me, that is really impactful when you're talking about things like production. Like, okay, am I actually evaluating the risk here, or am I just scared? And like Amber just said, a healthy fear is good. It's good to have a healthy fear of things, but you don't want that to be paralyzing.
Yeah.
I had sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I had different experiences that we had tested in production, but it was never like a big problem. Like there was this separate client, like it's in your own client, so it's not affecting anyone.
Mm-hmm.
There was a separate organization in the system that it was the test system was also not affecting anyone. But one thing that I did very recently, it wasn't really testing, but it was my way of getting data that I could not reproduce for development because of the huge load of the system.
Yep.
Like I would put some metrics in logs and things that it would get to production and it would collect data for me. So I could like observe and like learn from production, but I'm not really testing. I was just, like learning. And I put too many metrics and it blew up. It caused a memory leak. And luckily, like you said, it was an easy rollback. So it was like they saw it. I said, just remove it. We don't need this. It was just me testing, and they knew it. They knew what I was doing, and we turned it off, removed the metrics. But yeah, and it's nice that you mentioned the SMS. I think one of the projects that I'm getting to right now, it's actually to introduce SMS in the system. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that. Yeah.
If you spend a little bit of time going through the Can Spam Act and understanding the different classifications of SMS, don't expect your product person to know everything about the SMS stuff. If you've got a compliance group, talk to them.
Oh yeah.
SMS is it's one of the very few things in testing that I am afraid of. And like, I'll punch a bear. But SMS and HIPAA privacy leaks, because you can be personally liable for HIPAA privacy leaks in a way that like you can't for other stuff. So SMS and HIPAA, those are the things that scare me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you.
That's
I
gonna
love how I was like, don't be scared. And I'm like, but do be scared of this.
Medical and banking both are very highly regulated.
I work
I'm
for
not
both.
less afraid.
Yeah, same here. One of the jobs I had, similar to like with the test data, we had real data in our test environment. It was cleansed, but only partly cleansed. So at one point, we accidentally sent some emails to not our customers, but our customers' customers. and,
No.
yeah, and it got out. I don't think it was like a huge number, but it definitely was not what we wanted to happen. So going forward, we what we ended up doing was configuring the mail server to drop any to just not pass along email unless it was to a test domain that we set up. So that, and then we like replaced all the email addresses in the system with the test domain. But if somebody accidentally entered something else in there, the mail server would still drop it. So that way we could eliminate it. Prior to that, we tried using, like, we replaced them all with Google addresses and, like with the hyphen and stuff like that. Google ended up blacklisting. So
I've done that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're like, all right, that's not going to work. So
We got blacklisted from the Google location API at a company because somebody was accidentally running a location-based thing on their dev server and trying to churn through like 1 million records that just were not real. So it couldn't ever actually return anything. And yes, absolutely. I just shared the slides with everyone. Feel free to slide, take screenshots of them, tell everybody how wonderful I am, or don't, whatever. You can tag me on LinkedIn, just Jenny Bramble. I'm the only Jenny Bramble at Avid Exchange. I should come right up. Yeah.
So I was surprised when I did move to like the finance industry that they were a little more open to testing in production than I was expecting them to be. We just had to document every single thing we did, and then they did transactions to back stuff out. But there were integrations and stuff that we had to test in production because the integration just was not there in the test environments. So there were a few instances where not only did we have to test in production, we had to coordinate with another institution to be able to do it so that we could confirm that communication between the two to do it. But they were very open to testing in production, which, surprised me a little bit. But
the major difference I'm seeing between the healthcare orgs and the financial orgs is healthcare, you could release personal data about somebody, like foundational data about their being. And financial's just money. Like you could absolutely ruin somebody's day, but somehow it doesn't feel as important, or it doesn't have as much gravitas as this person has spine cancer or something. They do have to fill out a lot more paperwork though. So that.
So when I shared this talk that we were going to be doing this talk on the Ministry of Testing website, one of the people that is key to the Ministry of Testing mentioned that he did a song about testing and production. So, and he suggested that I share it. So I'm gonna share it, or try and share it. I'm not quite sure how well the audio is going to come through, but oh, it says share audio. So okay, let's see how it goes.
So I've done another song.
Excellent. All right, Richard, go for it.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. I didn't know if they would even let me test in live. But then I spent so many nights thinking what users do wrong, and I grew strong. And I learned how to get along, no turning back. It's no disgrace. I just walked in to find you there with that sad look upon your face. I could address all of your
Back. Sorry.
fears. I could show you what's the key. If I'd have known for just 1 second all the questions you'd ask me, go on now, ship out the door. Just turn monitoring on, cause we're not frightened anymore. We pushed to production and our software's flying high, and it didn't crumble. And we gave A and B a try. Oh no, don't cry. We will survive. Oh, as long as we know how to test, I know we'll stay alive. I've got lots of tests to give, and the project will forgive our testing live. Our testing live. Hey, hey. Now, this bit, you have to imagine there's violins and a big instrumental because it's short. And I'm going, what's left? I'm doing Movember in November. All this beard's coming off. And I'll.
So there.
That was amazing.
That was really good.
Tell them I loved that so much.
I will pass that along. So next month, we're taking the month off. January, we will come back and we will be planning out the rest of the year. So if there's talks that you'd like to, topics, if you'd like to present or anything else, come in January. If you can't make it in January, let Tony or I know, and we will absolutely get you written in to do something. The URL for the meeting is going to be changing. So it'll be changing next year. We'll have a different URL, and we're probably going to be switching over to Teams instead of Google. So, does anybody else have anything that they want to talk about?
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much for coming.
And I appreciate you letting me be my spooky gothy little self for Halloween.
That was great.
And for those that don't know, Jenny stepped in at the last minute to Jenna Carlton was going to come talk to us, and she wasn't able to make it, so Jenny stepped in to do it for us, and I really appreciate her willingness to speak for us and share her knowledge.
Gonna say Jenna and I are interchangeable, but like
I could see why you're friends.
they are my testing bestie.
Anybody have anything else? All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend and happy Halloween. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.